There we go.
But it's not bad.
That's not too bad. And then just do, there you go. You're good. Don't touch anything.
Oh, okay. All right, guys. Sorry about that. Anyway, a few years ago, I started receiving reports about strange flying creatures around greater Kansas City area. And so I just started looking into it and collecting these reports, and there are quite a few. They either reported to me directly or they were reported to other investigators. Some of them MUFON investigators, some not. And then I found old newspaper accounts and, of course, books and on the internet. So the types of winged creatures in this study are the pterodactyls, Mothman, humanoids, and bat squatch, giant birds, fairies and small winged creatures, the butterfly people, and Thunderbird. And then I'll tell you why I think the way I do about the sources of these. So there were a total of 165 in the study that are in the book. And this graph just gives you an idea of how many of each type. And I was surprised to see how many Mothman reports there were compared to others. And then the next second was pterodactyl. And that to me was quite odd. Well, one of the early sightings of a strange, gigantic bird occurred in 1673 near Alton, Illinois. Marquette and Joliet were on an excursion across the U.S. at the time, and he reported that their party saw a painting of a gigantic bird during their exploration and found multiple pictographs carved or painted on rocks and in caves along the Mississippi River between Illinois and Missouri. The Illini people called the creature the Piasaw, which means bird that devours men. And this is a restored picture, painted, and it's in a different location, but it's close by. The original bluff was actually taken down, and nobody really knows why, because it, obviously very difficult with limestone. But this is a modern reproduction. Long tail, scaly skin, fangs, claws, and a flying creature. The Illini people told a story about how this creature was killing and eating their people. So the chief set a trap for it and they killed it. And what happened was the chief had a dream the night before that he said his ancestors gave him the idea for this. And so what they did, this creature had been capturing individuals from their tribe and taking them up to this cave in the bluffs and eating the people. And so they devised this plan where they had the warriors hiding, and they all had spears. They were all hiding, and then the chief stood out in the middle of this big opening, and sure enough, this thing came down to get him. And when it did, they all pounced on him and killed the creature. But when Marquette and Joliet were taken to a cave on the bluffs, they saw piles of human bones. So they believed the story. The Thunderbird is said to create thunder by flapping its wings, and this is per the Algonquin tribe, and lightning by flashing its eyes. So I want you to remember that because this is going to come up again. In 1746, the night before the Battle of Culloden, on April 16th, 1746, a huge, monstrous bird-like beast was seen hovering and flying above the battlefield. Known as the Scree, this Mothman-like being was reported to have eyes that blazed red and large and membranous wings like those of a hideous, devilish bat. The creature was seen as an ill omen, a precursor to death and tragedy that loomed on the horizon. It was a battle that brought to an end what was known as the Jacobite Rising. And that is from Nick Redfern. And then we have the pterosaurs, the pterodactyls. In 1976 in Idaho, Melinda Burgess Fouth and her father were driving in the desert when they saw a large pterodactyl-like creature flap its wings and lift off the ground, then fly 20 feet above their vehicle. The wingspan was 16 to 20 feet and resembled bat wings, and the body was the size of a man. In Independence, Missouri, in the year 2000, Frank Kay saw two pterodactyls gliding on air currents over northeast Independence, Missouri. He said they were huge and couldn't be anything else. He said they were the size of small planes. This location is where multiple UFOs have been seen by witnesses on many occasions. Then in Jackson County, Missouri, two sisters live near a lake in Jackson County, Missouri. I think it's Lake Jacomo. They've seen a pterodactyl-like creature on 4 separate occasions. I believe on at least one occasion, the lake had turned to ice. It was in the middle of winter, and their house is nearby, and they take photos of wildlife. They're professional photographers. So they were out taking pictures that day, and they zoomed in on something very strange, some distance from them on the lake. But when they looked at it through their cameras and their zoom, they could see that it was a pterodactyl-like bird, and it had the crest on the top of the head, and it was using its folded wings, and then right there at like the elbow area is where it would move itself on the ice, acting like arms, and was move around like that. And they think that it was hunting for fish, and then it flew off. Another time they were out in the springtime, and they saw what they thought was an eagle fly overhead, so they used their cameras again and got a good look at it, and no, it was a pterodactyl. It was not anything else. And that site is also known for UFO sightings and USO sightings. Then we have giant birds. Unexplained giant birds have been seen for many years, but sighting numbers seem to have been up lately, or at least people are reporting them now. On April 26, 1890, a giant bird was seen in Tombstone, Arizona. And this is for the Tombstone epitaph that talks about it. The title was found in the desert, a strange winged monster discovered and killed on the Huacha Desert. In this article, the writer describes a winged monster resembling a huge alligator with an extremely elongated tail and an immense pair of wings. Does that sound familiar? That sounds like the Alton event the Pius saw. It was found by 2 men on horseback who subsequently shot and killed it after chasing it for some time. This is either the original old photo or a photo taken for a movie that was set up exactly like the old photo. And no one really knows which is which now because they had reenactors do the exact same thing, but this is what they saw. So this is during the Civil War. And then this is an unknown photo that I found on the internet. It's very grainy. It's old. It looks old. It looks real. That sure looks like a pterodactyl to me. Then in 2010, in Independence, a woman and her 2 children saw a bird the size of a plane glide silently 200 feet overhead. It had a long tail with a puff at the end. And this is not the only time I've heard that. And this is just a photo that I found off the internet. I have no idea exactly what that thing looked like. But she said it glided and it only flapped its wings a few times and was completely silent. They never would have noticed it if one of her children hadn't seen it and pointed it out. And then in 1955 to 1956, James Bear, who's now deceased, was an investigator for MUFON, a very good investigator, by the way. And he told me that he and his father saw some gigantic birds, and also a lot of children near Brush Creek in Kansas City over a 1 year period. And then they were gone and they never came back. So what happened was his father called for him, for James, and he said, "Look at that huge owl on top of the garage." But when James looked at it, he said, "That's no owl. That the creature was 4 feet tall." They both agreed it was too large to be an owl. So, and he and his friends would often play down at Brush Creek, which in those days, was sparsely populated around that area. Now, they've got lots of houses around, but they used to play on the creek, and they said they would see those 4 foot tall birds on the opposite side quite often, and they look like juveniles. He thinks that they were juvenile birds, and there must have been a bigger one around that would have been their mother. And he watched them quite often, the other kids saw them as well, and then after a year, they were just gone and never came back. And then we have creatures with bat-like wings. In the 1990s, in the Marley Woods area, several people saw a Sasquatch with bat-like wings. The locals in South Missouri and northern Arkansas have dubbed this bat squatch. Now, this only seems to be in southern Missouri and northern Arkansas. So it's very unique, but there are so many sightings, including one that I received from a doctor who saw it when she was out there. Uh, she was a veterinarian and working on some animals. She was very credible. So there is something going on with that. And I don't find any mention of it anywhere else in the world, only in that location. Then the Swope Park area, I don't know if you're familiar with this in Kansas City. It's a huge, huge park. There have been balls of light, Sasquatch sightings, UAP sightings, and gigantic humanoids with wings. It's the 51st largest municipal park in the United States and the largest park in Kansas City, with over 1,800 acres of woods, streams, lakes, and fields. It's named in honor of Colonel Thomas H. Swope, a philanthropist who donated the land to the city in 1896. Coincidentally, he is a cousin of mine. And this is Swope Park, and these are some of the push pins in the area where you can see a lot of, Bigfoot, winged humanoid sightings, balls of light. And if you'll note here, this is 39 degrees latitude right here. We seem to have strange events happen along 39 degrees, 38, 37, then into Arkansas, 36. Multiple sightings seem to be along this line. And in 2020, there was a Mothman sighting. LaRon Pryor was a witness to a big UFO sighting in 2011 during October, during the flap at that time. But he called me in 2020. He said he was outside at a barbecue with friends when they all saw a gigantic shadow of a winged creature on the ground. So they looked up to see what the shadow was, and they saw a huge humanoid with wings that stretched out at least 20 feet. They couldn't see his face, and this occurred in the middle of the afternoon. Now, this is a little bit unusual for someone to see one of these things during the day, but it does happen occasionally. Then on June 20th, 2019, we had a lot of strange things happening in Kansas City. You may have heard about this. There were multiple UAP sightings reported to the media and mass hysteria across the entire city. Social media was just blown up with the sightings of these things that were hovering over the city for over 6 hours. We had reports of glowing rods in South Kansas City, red orbs, brilliant blue light, which was my sighting in Independence, a huge blackbird sighting in Blue Springs, a pterodactyl sighting near Swope Park. All of these things happened on the same day, June 19th. Yeah, and let me just back up a minute on that one. Some of the people who saw these things were actually MUFON investigators, so they were credible people, including me. I saw a blue light. I looked outside my window, and I didn't know. Let me back up. I didn't know about these orbs, these large orbs that were around Kansas City during the day. But that evening, I was standing in my kitchen and I noticed a blue light across the street that was sitting on top of the street light. It was about the size of a basketball and it was brilliant. It was blinding. And then it rose up a couple of feet and then shot off to the northeast. And then the next day I heard about what happened here. And what happened, people are seeing these white things in the sky for hours and hours and calling all the media and on all over social media. Well, early in the afternoon, DARPA released a statement on Facebook and they said, "We released 3 high altitude, high tech weather balloons on that day." Or no, 3 days prior. So that's all they said. So the media picked that up and they said, "Oh, those must be those DARPA balloons that they released 3 days prior." So the problem with that is that the prevailing winds were going the opposite direction from where the balloons were released on the East Coast. So that was an impossibility. And then Larry Tyree did a quite extensive research on this. He and I worked on these cases together, but he did quite extensive research and he has a PowerPoint presentation on that, which I highly recommend taking a look at that. Okay, so what is the Mothman humanoid being? This type of creature gained notoriety after the Point Pleasant, West Virginia sightings of a winged humanoid creature, and it gained attention from the media. The news reporters called it by different names until the term Mothman stuck. In most cases, the creature resembles a humanoid with bat-like wings, so it probably should have been called Batman. Its most outstanding feature is glowing red eyes that are hypnotizing. Not all witnesses see red eyes, though. Most accounts of this type of creature include arms, legs, humanoid body, and no neck with large wings. It's been reported in multiple locations around the world. So the Point Pleasant Mothman, 1966, and yes, continuing to today. It began with numerous UFO and light sightings for at least 6 months prior to the Mothman sighting, the first Mothman sighting. People were suddenly psychic, who were never psychic before. They were having premonitions. They were getting visits from MIBs, men in black. Some people saw a winged humanoid, and the newspapers called it Mothman. The sightings are continuing to this day. They did not end at that time. People associated the Silver Bridge collapse with the Mothman and therefore with impending doom. Now, remember earlier I mentioned that battle I spoke of, there was a creature that sounded, the description sounded exactly like what we're talking about here, and they felt it was a portent of impending doom. John Keel's book, The Mothman Prophecies, is very good. There was a movie made. The movie, of course, was made by Hollywood, and so it's dramatized quite a bit. But the John Keel book will tell you much more about the truth. On September 2018, a sighting occurred, and it was reported in January 2019 in Nevada. A single witness submitted this case to MUFON, which was investigated by MUFON field investigator Jeanette LaTulippe. The witness saw a 7-foot-tall humanoid being with large leathery wings and muscular legs drop down in front of his vehicle as he drove and land on the road in front of him. And these are drawings by the witness that were made in 2021. And over here on the side, this is what he wrote. He said He had his high beam lights on. He was driving at a speed of about 85 miles an hour as the creature dropped from high up and landed in front of his car. I kept saying out loud, "What is that? What is that?" Trying to understand what I was seeing. And then he gives the location of where this was. He can't see any eyes. It has no face. He kept thinking, "What is it?" I only have 4 seconds to react. So I start easing my foot off the accelerator, turn the wheel slightly to the left to avoid hitting this thing. I got past it and did not strike it at all. I can't believe what I'm seeing. I'm not scared, just trying to understand what I'm looking at. My distance traveled and the time did not match up. I did not stop. I continued on my way to work. Does that sound familiar about the time being off? At this point, it let out this loud, annoying frequency that sounded like a bat in extreme pain and distress. It was at this point it showed me pictures of animals crossing the street. I could see through these animals. It was a rabbit, a bird, and a deer. Then it said in a very clear voice, "I am no different than these. I am no threat to you." All this at the same time. I was thinking about shooting this thing. My thoughts and its answers were almost simultaneous. I was not the only car on that road that morning. "Why me?" he asked. Now, Jeanette went to the site with the witness, and she said that as they approached the area where he saw this thing, they both felt a heaviness in the air, a darkness, and felt very strange. And then when they backed away from it, that feeling went away. They approached it again, the feeling came back again. So there was some kind of residual energy left behind that stayed for some time after. Then we have some winged creatures in Oklahoma. Mindy Toutfest was the state director for Oklahoma at the time, and she called me to come down to help her with this case because she'd never dealt with anything like it before. So I did, and we got more than we bargained for. The witnesses have seen UAPs, balls of light, a spirit walking, tiny fairies, large fairies, a pterodactyl, and a slender man. And these these are a picture of the mimics. Now they call them mimics because they're large. They're like 10 inches in height, and they look like fairies, but they're large. So for some reason they call them that. Okay. That's strange. Okay, so this is a film of the area that I took. I'm going to show it's a short film. So keep an eye out. The fairies come from behind this big tree and they go in the yard or they go across. They move very, very fast. There was a bunch right there.
Yes, that's it. Yeah. And they're in all different sizes. And for some reason, they're letting you guys see them. Normally don't. There's one that looks like a bird until you get to looking at it real good. Yeah, that's the one I saw.
You can see some things that flip in and out very, very quickly. There's one going across. This is a park behind their house.
We
Yeah.
first noticed above our house and across the street parallelogram with a big, huge bright light in it, and each arc going through each corner. Well, we got to thinking about it. She goes, "Well, maybe that's the International Space Station." I said, "No, not." And then just sat there. So more and more of these little squares started showing up. and they started making a grid, just like this. Well, the planes started going around. I thought that was weird, you know. Can't see anything. Why are they going around this? And they still do today, for the most part. Now I lost where I was at. What was I saying?
The parallelogram.
Oh, yeah. So. Okay.
He gets
So
excited.
we had a whole bunch of the little ones in the western sky, and you could see them drawing out this pattern. Well, the first time I come out, after it's been about 3 days, this has been going on. So I come around the corner of the house, and I come into the backyard, and I look up, and right along the high wires, about 4 feet above them, was a parallel, just a simple parallelogram, orange. It had the bar, and that's all it was, just a square, not, well, no three dimensional, not three dimensional. And it floated all the way across, and Debbie was getting something on the phone over here on this side. And by the time she turned to get it, of course, it was gone, you know? It had gone
Wow.
and then it disappeared straight up. But we couldn't figure out why all those parallelograms were here. And then that's when, the next night is when she got her video of that craft. And we had been sprayed. We had a big craft over here that sprayed the black mist. And then the ones that were over there sprayed, and that actually got on us one of the times. And shortly after that is when she became real bad sick. And I felt like I had the flu, but without the normal flu symptoms. It was just a horrible bad feeling. And then that's when shortly after that we got a hold of her. And that's when we started involving Mindy into it.
What kind of symptoms did you have?
Actually, when I first got sick, it was, I don't know, I thought it was allergies at first. And then when I went to the doctor, he said I had bronchitis and pneumonia, which I thought was odd. But it has continued the entire year, the breathing problem.
You would think she was a long hauler if you didn't know.
Yeah, I kind of wonder about that.
And you never had a problem with that before?
Never problem, any problem with my breathing at all.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago it came again where she became so sensitive, like if I was to go outside and come in, it's just the pollen on me would make her cough and gag and carry on.
I'd lose my breath and I couldn't breathe, and I'd have to end up having to, like, well, I've got an epinephrine shot I have to take if I get really bad.
But this is just since that happened.
Yeah, this year, that's why I have the trouble breathing, I think. It's just,
And look,
that's
it's
all
made me
that
really
wax
ugly. Nothing I can do about it. See, I mean, everybody.
Did when this substance came out and was sprayed down, was there any on the ground?
You know, we didn't take much time once we felt it on ourselves, we went into the house.
Yeah, we ran.
But I notice even today, sometimes there'll be this black, unexplainable feeling texture
On
thing
my
on our
car.
cars. And you go out there and you're thinking, okay, black, where did the black stuff come? But it's hard to get off the car. And it's just all ours.
You notice it on
Okay.
that white one. More
Yeah.
so, it's on the gray one
Weird.
too, but no.
We were
Okay,
sophomores in high school, and there's an old silo that's just south and west of the old Crossroads Mall. And it's probably 15 stories, 14 stories tall. Well, my friend and I, we were the first kind of ghost hunters I guess I ever was around. So we went to this thinking, well, it's old, it's reserved for some strange reason, let's go check it out. So we pulled up, and then you could get to it. So we went through the gate, got to the actual door, and opened the door, went in, and we started going upstairs. And we had gone about a flight, and you had to turn back to the right, there was a wall. And we both, at the same time, this very long clawed hand came around the corner, and it was 3 times as big as a human, and real long, came around, hit that. Then the other one came around and looked like it turned and looked at us, and it looked like a combination between a dragon and an alligator. I can't even explain it to you. So we, of course, immediately left. Well, never to go back. Her and Amber went back several years later. Everything's there, the fence is all there, only you're not allowed to go into that building anymore. Yeah, they wouldn't let them in, they wouldn't even let them near it.
you know, right there in Moore.
The same.
I
That
don't
was,
like
that was my first encounter with something weird.
big.
And this is a drawing by the two witnesses. That's Lloyd's fairy creature that he saw that was about 10 inches tall. He was in his backyard shortly after the UFO encounter and this stuff that fell down on them and on their car. And he was doing something. He had his back to that tree, and then he heard something make a noise and say, "Turn around." So he turned around and he saw three fairies sitting in the tree just staring at him. And they were big, and he was in shock, and they were laughing at him. And then they flew off, and he got pictures of them several times. Then, not long after that, his wife was going to the store and driving by herself down the road when she saw something come out of the woods and fly across in front of her windshield. She stopped the car and she got out and stood there, and there was some type of what she thought was a female fairy holding a bundle like a baby. And when she started to get a little bit closer, it flew off and went away. So this is the area my husband believes in nothing unusual. So when he and I and Mindy and the two witnesses were standing there, we saw a bunch of white winged fairies come out of here and fly across. At first I thought that they were butterflies, but to the naked eye, there were a couple hundred of them. On film, you only see a few, and they move so fast. They move across here, and then when they get to this fence, it's like they go in a portal and disappear. They're just gone when they get to that line right there. It was very odd. And here's another short video of that. Now you can see some of them coming out and moving around very quickly. It's difficult to see. Now, after our investigation at the house, we went to a lake called Kitchen Lake that was nearby, and here is where they saw a pterodactyl. Tell me about the pterodactyl sighting.
I saw it off to the west. It was flying low, just treetop level over the trees, and it was just kind of gliding over. And when I saw it, I pointed it out to my husband and I asked him what that was. And it was the size of a plane, but it was dark, and I was like, "What is that?" And as it started coming towards our direction, it flew in front of us over the street and back off to the east. But as it flew over us, I couldn't decide whether it was a dragon or a pterodactyl. It was so big and so strange. I've never seen anything like that before. It was like at 8:30 in the morning, or maybe sooner than that, maybe 8 o'clock. It was early in the morning on a Sunday, so the streets were dead.
And you saw it too, Lloyd?
Yeah, when she pointed it out to me, it was pretty much over our hood. And as it got past just a little bit back to the east, it did a big flap with its wings, and it kind of propelled it up, I don't know, 20, 30 feet, and then straight out behind it, and it was gone. I don't know where it went.
Yeah.
But it was directly over this lake, headed that direction. So,
And when it would flap, it was just a real gentle, like,
yeah,
just,
no, you
no.
couldn't hear anything, you could just see it.
It was very quiet.
Tell me about. Okay, this is a heck of a video right here. Gonna have to watch it very closely. I just finished putting this together today. It was something I found on YouTube, and I couldn't believe it. So here we go. The other thing, well, before I do that, I want to tell you about the witnesses in Oklahoma. After we got back to their house, they mentioned again about they said, "Oh, look, there's some of that black stuff on our car." So I got a sample of it, and that is what had fallen out of a UFO onto them and their car several times. They had seen this thing several times, and it only seemed to fall on their vehicle. So I took a sample, I sent it to the MUFON lab, and Lynn Mann analyzed it, and she said it was pond scum. So we theorized that UFOs like to hide in lakes, so they're USOs. Kitchen Lake was right there nearby. And if it had come out, come up, and then either had something on it outside or was expelling, had, taken some of the water in and then they were expelling it, they expelled it out over this couple in their car, Lynn said that would explain the woman's respiratory problems because there's all kinds of little creatures and bacteria and stuff in that pond scum, little living creatures. So that part was very bizarre. The couple moved to another location in Oklahoma since, and I've kept in touch with them. They actually saw little tiny, I'm not sure if they're fairies or what they are, creatures in a tree outside of their house, on the other side of the sidewalk, and they took footage of it and sent it to me. I couldn't believe it. And I'll probably need to put that on my YouTube channel here pretty soon. Okay, here we go. Got to watch this video. This is out of West Virginia. So, now we're going to move on to some more recent sightings that center around Chicago and Kansas City since 2012. Kansas City, starting in 2014, people started reporting strange winged creatures. Tony Dane has had multiple sightings in the KC area. This is one witness that's had multiple sightings. 2014, a Mothman emerged from a cloud in Lee's Summit. As he was walking down the street, he noticed this strange single cloud in the sky, no others. And this thing just kind of floated down, hovered, stared at him, and went back up into the cloud. In 2014, he was walking on the street again from his apartment in Lee's Summit, and there was a bush ahead, and he noticed something moving, and this is around dusk. And then it appeared to be some type of a winged creature that was seated, but also using its wings to move around. And it looked so horrible that he just simply backed up from it and did not go on his way, went back to his apartment. In 2016, he saw a Mothman flying over I-70 in Lee Summit, Missouri. He had a passenger in the car with him. The passenger did not see it. In 2019, he had a Mothman sighting near the Liberty Bend Bridge in between Independence and Sugar Creek, Missouri. The Missouri River is at that location, and that's what that bridge is called. In that case, he was moving and driving from the Kansas City airport back home on 291 highway, and approaching that bridge, he saw a Mothman approach from the right. It was about 7 feet tall, flew in front of him. He slowed the car down, and it hovered in front of him with beady red eyes and glaring at him in a very threatening manner, and then moved off to the left. And then in 2020, he saw a Mothman in Kansas from a distance. And also in 2020, I already said that one. And then in 2021, he went to pick up someone. He was an Uber driver. He picked up a Kansas City chief from the airport and drove him home in Kansas. So he was driving on the highway, and there was evidence left behind that was tested by the lab and me. What? This is not changing. Okay. Whoops. So this is the Liberty Bend Bridge. I've been down there several times doing investigations. Some other investigators have as well. And there is a presence under the bridge that I now recognize as the Mothman presence. And I think that it is hanging out there, maybe sleeping there, or something. That may be why they like bridges. Who knows? So here is that 2021 sighting by Tony. He drove a client home. On the way, they both noticed that there were suddenly no other cars on the highway, and that highway is extremely busy at all hours of the day and night. It was about 10:30 at night, and they both thought that was odd. Tony then sensed that the Mothman was near, and after you have been near it, apparently, this is what happens, and you know that it's present. He then went back to the airport and stopped to fill up his car with gas. He noticed a strange substance on the vehicle and called me the next morning. And this is a picture he took while he was at the gas station. And thank goodness he did not wash the car. He had washed the car earlier that day, by the way, so it was clean. So there was something all over the top of the hood, but nowhere else on the car. Not on the sides, not on the windows, not on the back or the front, only in that location. So I tested the car with an EMF meter, and it spiked on top of the car only while the car is off. I took samples of the substance and sent it to the lab. I tested the car with a compass, and what I did was I started about 15 feet away, and I moved in slowly. As I approached the car, within 5 feet from the car, the compass moved out. It moved 120 degrees. Then I went back and I did it again 3 times, did exact same thing, moved exactly 120 degrees. And I also noted that the substance was only on certain areas of the vehicle. The testing results indicated that the substance was urine and feces from a bat. Note that it was crystallized and the temperature was 39 degrees. And Mel Van Vickle is the one who noted that it was crystallized when I sent him the photos. The problem is that it was specifically a brown bat. So I looked that up. That's what Lynn said. So I looked it up, and brown bats typically live in woods. They are large. They don't live in neighborhoods, and they don't hang out over highways. So that was very odd to me. And then we became part of the story. Gene Walker is a field investigator and a section director for Kansas City, and I had encounters with the Mothman. She and I had talked about the Tony Dane case several times, but one evening we weren't talking about it. We hadn't been talking for a few days, but one evening while I was on my deck, I felt a presence of something, and then I saw a shadow of a body and one wing rise up on the right side. It rose up and then it went down, but there was no wing on the left side, only the right side. I then turned to look at the street light because the street light casts light on my deck. And if something is in front of it, it will make a shadow. And there was nothing there. I couldn't see anything. Whatever that was had to be huge in order to make a shadow that big. I would estimate height wise 6 feet shadow. So that was weird. So I called Jean and told her about it. I called her that night, told her about it. I think it was about 9:30. She says, "You've got to be kidding me." That afternoon at about 3:30, she was driving on I-35 in Kansas City. Now, this is the same highway that the other encounter happened. Okay. And she noticed a shadow of a body and the right wing only over the road as she drove on I-35, and it was huge. It took up at least the width of one lane plus over the side was how big it was. And she was driving, so she couldn't really look back to see outside of the window. Then, during a trip to Cape Girardeau, where I was going to be speaking at a conference, Gene Walker went with me to help me. And on our way, we're driving on I-70. We're about halfway between Kansas City and Columbia, and there's nothing really in that area. My car started shaking violently, and at the same time, Gene saw a shadow of a Mothman over the road, completely covering a huge area of the road and the vehicle, just as the SUV, right at that moment. So, and she's yelling at me about the shadow, and I'm freaking out because my car is shaking violently. It was a brand new car. It was 1 week old. Okay. Oh my goodness. Hang on just a minute. So I pulled off the highway and I stopped at a place. I'm trying to call my my dealer. I'm trying to call any dealer for Santa Fe to get somebody out there. And so Jean called her boyfriend and he said, "I'll just let it sit for about 20 minutes and try it again." So I did, and it started up and it ran fine, and I didn't have any more problems with it until a few months ago. It did it again, and the dealer said that it was full of carbs, that it needed a tune-up for $1,600. And in the manual, it says I'm not going to need a tune-up until 60,000 miles, and there was only 32,000 miles on the vehicle. So that to me was very strange. Then on July 20th in 2019, oh, this is the one that we were talking about earlier. Okay, and my slides got mixed up. And then I wanted to talk a little bit about the butterfly people in Joplin, Missouri. I don't know if you heard about this, but basically there was an EF5 tornado that went through Joplin on May 22nd of 2011. Hundreds of children saw butterfly people who saved their lives. The children all said this independently. So they didn't know each other. There's all these people going to different hospitals, and these kids would say, we were all huddled together and I saw a butterfly person and they covered us and saved my family and this was the same story all across the city. So it got to be, it made the news. And now there's a big mural, and this is part of the mural that was painted on a Joplin building showing the butterfly people. And they all called them that. They didn't call them angels. They didn't say fairies, didn't say anything else. They just said butterfly people. That must have been what they look like butterfly wings. And then fairies. So we're going to go down the rabbit hole again here. Oh, first, now I'm going to show you this video potentially of a pterodactyl. It's been up for about 10 years. So I want you to take a look at it, see what you think. Okay, so that's one strange one. And then here's another video. You've probably seen this one on some documentaries, but it's got like a creepy little fairy in it.
Family in the UK in 2013 seems to have captured what looks like a fairy on camera. Let's watch. Oh. What do you guys think? Family in the
Yeah, I thought that was interesting. But I've seen them myself. So here we go. 1966, Kansas City. My sister and I saw two fairies fly through a screen in the window. The screen was closed. They went right through it. They looked at us. One went over to me, one went over to her, and then they flew out a second screened window in the room. I got up. We went into the kitchen where my grandmother was and told her what we saw. And she said, "Oh, that's why I planted lilies of the valley outside this window." They were outside because that's the favorite flower of the fairies. And we were in shock because she'd never mentioned fairies before. It was very strange. And my brother saw them as well on a number of occasions. Then in 1984, at the same location, my two children, age 8 and 6, were running around the house when my oldest daughter disappeared and was gone for 45 minutes. They were chasing each other. That was a game they played. The youngest one, was trying to catch the older one. When my youngest daughter came around the corner, she stopped and she said, "Where's Maria?" And I looked around and I said, "Well, isn't she chasing you?" She goes, "No, I was chasing her." And there wouldn't have been any time for her to be gone. Now, that location was right by the lilies of the valley, right underneath that window, where some other strange things had happened. We were scouring every bit of the house inside and out, and the neighbor was looking as well. And I was getting ready to call the police when I saw my daughter run around the corner and she stopped dead in her tracks. She said, "How did Rachel get here?" And, because she shouldn't have been in front of her, she should have been behind her. She had no idea she'd been gone for 45 minutes. She had just thought she was running. And then in February 2020, while outside on my deck, I was thinking about how the winged creatures might come in and out of portals when I saw a flash of light and a gold fairy appear out of it, fly across the deck, and then another flash of light occurred and the fairy disappeared into it. How coincidental is it that this occurred right as I was writing about winged creatures and fairies. And I had just been thinking the question, I wonder if they're coming in and out of portals. That's why people don't see them all the time. And this, I had a friend of mine do this drawing because I can't draw anything. And I just described it to her, and this is pretty good. The fairy was gold, completely gold and glowing bright. And then the portals on the left and the right appeared. She came out. First one disappeared. Another one appears to my right, and she went into it and went out. So there was my answer. Somebody was listening. And this happened just 3 feet away from a portal opening at my house. I've got a portal there. I've seen all kinds of creatures come in and out of it. 3D, always black. Very strange situation, but not really unusual for me. And then we have the Thunderbird. Until I saw one myself, I thought the Thunderbird was just a legend. And in Washington, Missouri, you can find an ancient Thunderbird petroglyph. You can go there to that park to see that. This is Thunderbirds carved in sandstone wall at Twin Bluff in Juneau County, Wisconsin, by prehistoric artists. And you find that these Thunderbirds are typical all over North America and beyond. They're depicted as hybrids or humans and birds. Here's a painting of a Thunderbird from the Great Lakes region, pre-1800. Thunderbird legend is from all over North America, dating from ancient times. Similar beings appear in mythologies in China, Africa, and India, and all over the world. Here's a partial list of creatures with wings, which include angels, jinn, the devil, dragons, fairies, firebird, gargoyle, griffin, lightning bird, Pegasus, phoenix, sirens, sphinx, sylph, thunderbird, unicorn, and there are many others that when I looked this up, I didn't even recognize, but these are the more common ones. And here is an ancient carving of a winged person. It's supposed to be a jinn. And then we had encounters with a thunderbird. My daughter left work one day. She heard footsteps as if someone was running towards her. And she heard a flapping sound. She ran to her car and got in. She didn't even turn around. And then she locked the doors. And this is her car. At that instant, a dark shape appeared in the back window of her vehicle, and something like wings enveloped all of the windows from the back, and that includes the front windshield, completely covered. She couldn't see out of it. And then the entire thing dissolved into a gray mist and disappeared. She told me about it. And she called to tell me about it immediately after, while she was still sitting in the car. And then the very next evening, I would have my own encounter with a supernatural winged creature. Yeah, I don't know why those words aren't popping up, but I was on my back deck, and I looked up, looked across probably 175 feet away, 150 feet away. We have a railroad cut in the back of our house, and this was across the railroad cut. And I see something very similar to this. The body was really a little slimmer. I had someone else draw this. But it was no doubt in my mind, those wings were huge, 25, 30 feet wide. And then I heard a little noise to my right. And I look and I see something like this. Only the wings, that little elbow part, the wings, that bottom part were up, more like arms. And they were smaller creatures, and they had bat-like wings. And then when after I saw that, I turned back to look, and that big one was gone. It just disappeared. There was no flapping of wings, no rustling of leaves, because it was in the trees. It would have had to make a noise if it was a 3D creature. So that lends me to think interdimensional. It just phased out. And this is an old photo. Uh, and the next day I was talking on the phone about what I saw with my friend Pat DeLapp. There was a loud thunder going on. And of course we're talking about Thunderbird. And then thunder, real thunder comes, and she heard it from her place miles away. It kept going and going and going and not stopping. I've never heard anything like it. There was no rain, no lightning, just clouds. And she and I speculated that it was a Thunderbird. And in 1903, the Van Meter visitor. I don't know if you've heard of this. Multiple witnesses saw a strange flying creature that had bat-like wings and was bipedal, and it had a source of light that emitted from its forehead. And if you've done ufology work for a while, you know that sometimes it is reported that extraterrestrials emit light from their eyes or their forehead. Over a series of nights in the fall 1903, several respected and prominent men of Van Meter reported a half-human, half-animal with enormous, smooth bat wings flying about. It let off a powerful stench and scared the daylights out of them because it moved at speeds never seen before, and it shot a blinding light from its horned head. Shots were fired each time, first by implement dealer U.G. Griffith as it flew across building tops. The monster shrugged them off like a minor nuisance. The next night, the town doctor and bank cashier Peter Dunn separately saw the creature and opened fire. Dunn even took a plaster cast off the great three-toed tracks. And here is the Van Meter visitor in their newspaper. And these are some of their depictions of it. The following night, O.V. White, reportedly a deadeye with a gun, was awakened from his slumber in his quarters above the hardware store and shot at the creature that was perching atop a telephone pole. This awakened Sidney Gregg, who had been sleeping in a store nearby. Gregg said the monster hopped like a kangaroo. Even the local high school teacher saw it and deemed it some sort of antediluvian monster. And here is the Van Meter Bank from that time period. A posse gathered and found two creatures and chased them into an abandoned coal mine where they sealed it off. However, there have been several sightings since, up to 2024. And there are two books out, The Van Meter Visitor and The Van Meter Visitor 1903 and Beyond, by two different, well, some of the same authors, some different. But I've read the one on the left. It's very good. And he's got some good pictures and some original old pictures. Van Meter, Iowa holds a festival every year, usually September, to commemorate the first event. And I'm going to go next year. So if anybody wants to go along, I think that would be fun. In 2020, a woman in Sugar Creek, Missouri saw a hawk morph into a UFO and shoot off at incredible speed. In 2022, the same woman saw a hawk lower its wings, morph into a UFO, and again shoot off very fast. And on the same night, a man in Independence reported seeing a plane, which then lowered its wings and increased speed rapidly. So I think they may have seen the same thing on that night. Witness in a town near St. Louis has captured film of a very fast-moving objects that look like birds but morph. And here are two of those pictures of a very, very large flying something, and then they morph into disc-shaped UFOs. Okay. So we've got questions, of course. What are these creatures? Why hasn't anyone captured one? How do they just disappear without a trace? Common traits with these creatures are a feeling of dread, anxiety, or that something's just not right. The creatures seem unafraid of the witness, and many even approach them. The creatures seem to make no attempt to conceal themselves in many instances. A sensation that time is slowed down or the witness experiences missing time or altered time. The winged creature morphs or changes shape. In most cases, only a single entity is seen. In only 2 cases were 2 creatures seen at the same time. And that's in, of course, my own investigations. The winged creature's eyes are either black or red. No other color is ever mentioned. In no case has a living winged cryptid creature been captured. Many witnesses have also seen unidentified flying objects or lights prior to, during, or after an anomalous winged creature was spotted. In many cases, the witnesses are longtime UFO experiencers. Most witnesses report hearing no sound. In only a few, a wing flap is heard, and in still fewer, a very loud thunder-like sound is heard. Are some creatures following the rivers? So I have a theory that the Mothman type creature started in Point Pleasant, followed the rivers to Chicago, and then followed the river to St. Louis, and then across to Kansas City. I think there's probably some groups of them in each of these spots. In Chicago, I know they have over 130 sightings at this point. And then we have ley lines where we know that strange things happen. And Kansas City's got 2 major lays going through it. My theory is these creatures are an interdimensional or alien being, or both. It makes sense if they can move in and out of sight, they can morph into something else. They cannot be found in the 3rd dimension. And I've got a map, a Google map. So if you have seen a cryptid sighting, if you want to see this map, just look up winged cryptid sightings. And if you have seen something like that, a winged cryptid, I'd like to hear about it. You can send me an email either at my MUFON email or this one, margiek1111@gmail.com. That's my website. This is my book, Winged Aliens, and Debbie is going to be selling some there. They're also available on Amazon. And I will sign, if anybody buys from St. Louis area, from Debbie, then I'll endorse it to you and sign it, and then I'll ship a box to her. She can hand them out. We do have a Facebook group. It's called Worldwide Mothman, Winged Creature, and Cryptid Sightings, if you'd like to join that. People make interesting posts there. I would like to remind everybody we've got a new podcast for MUFON Midwest. And if you look for the MUFON Central Region on YouTube, you'll see that. And you'll also see presentations that we've done over the past few years that I've been uploading on YouTube so that you can see them anytime. And then we also have the MUFON Central Region newsletter that I do. If you want to get it, just send an email to MUFONCentralRegionDIR@gmail.com, and I'll put you on that list, and you'll get that monthly newsletter. And in it, we usually have an article, and then we'll also have, of course, meeting information for all of the states in the region. Okay. Let me stop my sharing.
How much is your book?
I'm sorry?
The cost of your book?
Oh, I think it's 16.
Yeah, oh, it is, yes. I
Yeah.
saw, that's right, on Amazon, it's $15.95. And if you don't have Amazon Prime, then you have to pay shipping. But Margie will send them to me, so don't worry about shipping. And so for $16, if you want one, and I'll have her sign it for you. And then I'll take orders for them. Yes. Thank you. Wow.
Are there any questions from anyone?
Oh, we're blinded.
Oh, no, sorry. I
Can't see. Yeah, Margie, did you remember my presentation? I don't know, one of the later ones. Puerto Rico, one of the creatures there, the chupacabra, they talked about it having red eyes, and they said sometimes they have wings. And I have
Yes.
a paper article that someone had drawn a picture of one. That's another winged creature.
I saw that recently as well, and I need to add that to the second edition.
Questions?
I have a
Anybody
question.
else?
Question, yes.
Yeah, on the couple that saw the fairies and then they moved and they saw the fairies again after they moved.
I couldn't
you-
quite hear that.
She
Can you
can't hear-
can you
Oh.
repeat it?
the couple.
No,
that-
no, Debbie, repeat it because I
Oh,
can't hear
okay.
from that distance.
Oh,
The couple that saw the fairies and then moved,
uh-huh.
and then they saw them again after they moved, do
Uh-huh.
you think the fairies are following those people?
I thought that.
Oh,
Right.
I
but-
heard, okay, I
Yeah.
heard that. I believe what it is their level of consciousness. They're open to it. They're not closed off. They don't have blocks. And I really think that that's what it is that they would attract that type of thing to them. I think that's really all it is. Got a question from Dennis, I believe. You'll have to unmute, Dennis. The way this thing is set up now, I can't.
No question from me unless there's another Dennis.
Okay, yeah, I saw it. Well, if you raised your hand in,
Oh, I clapped.
oh, you clapped. Okay, okay, thank you, Dennis. I appreciate that. All right, so yeah, if anybody else, you could just unmute yourself and ask. Of course, this is ongoing. There's a lot more involved to this. There's a lot more history involved. If we look at ancient history, you know, I could end up doing a presentation that's 8 hours long, so that nobody would sit through. But there's new information coming all the time. I just received a report of a Mothman about a month ago that I didn't get in this presentation. So there's a movie I'm working on, a documentary film. It's called Portals. And in it, I interview a woman who has had several encounters with Mothman, and she gives a good description of that. So.
Any more questions? Okay, then I'm going to take some book orders for you and
Okay.
and thank you so much once again. Wow, thank you. That's
All right. Thanks, everybody. Thanks for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Margie.
All right.
Bye.
Bye-bye.